when you think about like who are the leaders you want to like talk to or have lunch with or whatever, meet again or whatever it is, there's this theory that connects with it in preaching, right? So I come from the pastoral world. There's a theory that says that the pastor or preacher down the road in the church that nobody knows about is probably the best pastor or preacher you've ever met, but nobody knows, right? And like these sort of super popular, like sure they're popular cult of personality kind of people, but the best pastor you know is hidden down the street in this church that nobody knows about, right? That they are the best. Not all of them, but the best one is hidden, right? The best leader is hidden. I actually think the same is true in this conversation. Like, it's hard for me to argue with Jesus and Moses, but I think oftentimes, like, I think the best leaders are the quietest ones that nobody knows.
Hello and welcome back, listener or viewer. My guest today is a leadership coach. He's an experienced leader. He's spent over a decade leading teams at very high level. He's also led in some pretty differing environments, from the manufacturing industry, which we'll hear a little bit about, then as a pastor in a church during COVID as well. So he's got some interesting experiences and lessons learned. He's also a trauma coach as well, so we'll talk about that a little bit too. His name is Kurt Busch of the Brimstone Coaching Group, and today's conversation is very much focused on our key topic of leadership, putting people first, and how to succeed and create the environment for success in any team. So another informative conversation. I hope you find it entertaining as well. Plenty to learn from this one. Do stick around till the end or check those show notes, those ever-present notes down there, wherever it is that you're listening or watching. You will find there links to learn more about Kurt, perhaps find him on LinkedIn, check out his website, reach out to him as well. If you are new to leadership, if you are one of those accidental managers, the technical leaders, someone who's been promoted because of what you know and then pretty much left to your own devices to figure out leadership by yourself, then Leading with Integrity is here to help you with that. My Integrity Leaders online community is also there for you. It gives emerging technical leaders real-world guidance, access to a community of peers and like-minded leaders, and practical tools and knowledge so that you can lead with confidence instead of trying to guess your way through it. No more stumbling in the dark, or at least not by yourself. If you'd like to learn more, do visit leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. Plenty of information on that site. There's some free resources. There's a guide you can download. There's a quiz you can take. Then when you're ready, hit that big green button and choose the membership level that best suits you. And I look forward to welcoming you aboard very soon, any day now, today perhaps even. No pressure though. And in the meantime, let's get on with this conversation with today's episode of Leading with Integrity.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Kurt, welcome to Leading with Integrity. Lovely to have you on the show today.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks so much for having me, David.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to this conversation. And to start us off, over to you. Tell us a bit about your background, your career so far, what you do, why you do it, etc.
Yeah, that's a big open-ended question. It should only take about 45 minutes.
Okay, cool. I'll sit back, put my feet up, and over to you.
That's great. Yep. So yeah, my name's Kurt Busch. I am currently a leadership coach. I'm trauma certified and internal family systems certified. And I work with leaders of all kinds who feel stuck or exhausted or overwhelmed or just simply don't know how to take their next step into leading as authentically who they are. I spent about a decade in manufacturing. Most of that time was either as a production supervisor, managing a team of about 12 to 15 people. And I also did some HR. I did all the recruiting for the plant that I worked in, did benefits administration. Actually really loved that side of manufacturing. So I did that for about a decade. After that, I actually served a nonprofit. I actually pastored a local church for nearly a couple local churches for nearly a decade, and really loved that too. I think that time taught me how to lead volunteers, which is just a different game. And through that work, through leading volunteers, through a global pandemic, through some other sort of internal tensions, I realized I really loved helping people understand how they show up in places and what they're carrying into their leadership. And all of that kind of morphed into, hey, let's start a coaching practice with one of my best friends. So we launched our coaching practice called Brimstone Coaching Group in 2024, and we've been working with leaders ever since.
Very cool. Yeah. And an interesting eclectic mix there of experiences. Great point as well about leading volunteers. That's something we haven't really explored before. And I feel like leadership, when it works, looks the same more or less, regardless. But I feel like the main difference there is with volunteers, you can't threaten to cut their pay, for example, if they're not doing what you want, which to me isn't leadership. That's a different approach, isn't it? But I can see why a lot of people might struggle with that difference.
Yeah. I think I agree with you 100%, David. I think that gets into the managing piece, right? When we start to talk about consequences for not performing. But I think the big difference is that volunteers, this is like second or third job for them, right? These are people that we're asking, especially in a local church, we're asking them to do something in the evenings after they've worked a full day. They've, tried to hang out with their family for a little bit, and then we get to see them as leaders for, a couple hours, and trying to figure out like how to help them engage when they're tired, and when, like I'm in the trenches every day, they're not. It is just a different kind of leadership. When you talk about, how do you inspire people? How do you bring people along? How do you, equip people? Yeah, just a different world for sure.
Yeah, I think that another difference that perhaps is a positive, put it in the pros column, is the reason they tend to be doing it. It's more altruistic, isn't it? Not always. It depends on the charity, the organization, doesn't it? The non-profit. But certainly I would expect in a church environment, they're doing it because they want to do good. And I think that probably helps.
That's a great point, David. Great point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but I did do some sort of volunteer work way, way back in my 20s. It wasn't a church environment, and there were definitely people there for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. There are certainly, I can't speak to the UK culture, but in the Midwest US culture, there is definitely a posture sometimes like, hey, I get asked to do something. Well, I have to say yes. I can't say no. So there are some times where a volunteer ends up in a spot maybe they don't even want. But the honor or the privilege or whatever that looks like is too strong, and that can lead to some other things. That's maybe a topic for another podcast.
Yeah. I mean, also though, like people who want to help and do good are generally bad at saying no to things, aren't they? So
yes, that's correct. That's so good, David. Yep.
Awesome. And then something else you mentioned that I think is also worth exploring, particularly for a lot of people in the audience who maybe don't know what it means, but you mentioned being trauma certified. Can you expand on that a little bit more? Explain what it means firstly for anyone who doesn't know, and then go from there, I guess.
Yep. So I always like to say first, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a licensed therapist or a clinical therapist. So we think about trauma in two ways. One way, a clinical therapist would be able to speak to more effectively, which is big T trauma. Capital T trauma is a catastrophic event in a person's life. Something that will alter the course of a person's life. So we think about big T trauma. That's the lane of a clinical therapist or counselor. But we also think every single one of us has what we call little T trauma. Little T trauma are things like the moment in school where we get embarrassed in front of our class and our class laughs at us. That's little T trauma. Or the time where we present something at work and we forget what we're saying and we look silly or we get embarrassed there. That's little T trauma. or the times when maybe our parents say something to us that unintentionally hurts. That's little t trauma. So we would say that every single one of us has those experiences of little t trauma that shape how we show up as adults, that we learn in those moments how to respond to little t trauma. We learned how to keep it from happening again. And then we employ those ways of being to be safe. We just employ them for the rest of time until we decide we want to employ a different strategy. So much of our work is helping people understand, or ask the question, is there a little t trauma moment in my past that I'm responding to as if it's present today, even though it's firmly planted in the past? But while we all do that, certainly we all do that, what we find is that it's largely unhelpful. That if I have little t trauma, I have a little t trauma experience in third grade, which is like 8 or 9 years old, David. What I found out early in my kind of self-awareness journey is that when that little t trauma would get triggered, I would show up as like 8 or 9 year old Kurt. When actually the situation I was in needed present day Kurt, right? So that's what we mean when we think trauma. We are trauma informed, that our coaching is trauma informed in the sense that little t trauma is having an impact on how we lead today. And if we can become aware of it, we can begin to change those patterns of behaviors, how we show up and lead.
Okay, well, thank you for that explanation. And so, I mean, what drew you to seeking that qualification? Like, was it because of what you'd experienced, or was there something else going on? If it's too personal, you don't have to answer.
No, I'm an open book. So my coaching partner and I, we knew each other for almost a decade before we started coaching, and we met in a sort of self-awareness process or self-awareness journey, if you will, that we were participating in together. And some of that work was based on sort of family of origin things, and how family of origin shapes who we are and how we lead. Kind of based on this idea that we're all formed by someone or something. The question isn't, are we formed? The question is, who and how are we being, or who is forming us and how are we being formed? So I think we just came away from that process really looking inward at ourselves and our own experiences, and seeing how we were showing up today and how it was connected to those things in our past. Really quick, my third grade little t trauma was misspelling a spelling word in a spelling bee that was very easy. It was a very easy word, and I misspelled it. It was hugely embarrassing. And I learned as a leader that looking incompetent, or having one of those moments where I looked less competent than I am, I learned that that's dangerous and that's risky. That people might laugh at me, or people might think less of me. So I had started some of that work to say, like, okay, how do I undo that? That work was hugely impactful for me. It changed the way that I led. It changed the way that I showed up in spaces with people who I was leading, and also who were leading me. And over time, we just realized, like, we needed to understand this more. We needed to get a better grasp on it, so that we could really walk with others instead of just kind of doing our own work.
So you've triggered a memory in myself there as well. Very similar, not a spelling bee, but I can't remember what it was for. We had to read something out in front of the whole year of our school. Exactly the same. I mispronounced a word. Whole room laughed at me. And that's probably why I'm not super happy with public speaking even to this day.
Yeah. 100%. Can I ask you a question? You can always say no. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you when you get in a spot where you have, which public speaking, by the way, we're on a podcast together, David, which
I know, right? Yeah.
An interesting
It's not really
thing.
Public though, is it? Like, it's just the two of us. Yeah.
That's just the two of us. Yeah. So here's the question. You don't have to answer it. As a coach, I believe that I can ask the question, but you don't ever have to answer it. when you find yourself in a spot where like, man, I'm going to have to public speak, and you feel like you're going to have to present in front of somebody, does it feel the same? Like in your nervous system, in your body, does it feel like that moment?
Yeah, it can do. I think it's very context dependent for me now, because like intellectually, I know it's silly, but like it shouldn't make any difference. Like that was decades ago and they were kids. They didn't know any better. I shouldn't have taken it personally. It doesn't affect what I do today, et cetera, et cetera. But there is still that sort of the butterflies moment, isn't there?
Yeah. So we, again, we're not neuroscientists either. But our research, our study has led us to believe that in those moments, like when you mispronounce a word and I misspelled a word, that our nervous systems did what they know how to do, did what they're designed to do to keep us safe. And then over the course of time, whenever that danger feels the same, the nervous system does what it's best at and jumps in and says, I'm going to keep you safe. Which is really good. There is a time when we needed that. I needed it in third grade. You needed it, probably even for years after. Like we needed our nervous systems to keep us safe and protect us. The question really becomes, do we need it to do the same today? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no. You said it feels intellectually silly, and I agree with you. When I feel it, it feels that way too. And our nervous systems don't know the difference, right? They're just doing what they know how to do, keeping us safe until we can consciously tell our nervous systems, "Hey, why don't you chill for a little bit? We maybe don't need you the same way."
Yeah. It's something I think once you're conscious of it, maybe it's not easier to handle, but it's possible to handle it.
Yes.
Yeah. I do find that sort of thing fascinating though, like those sort of childhood memories that you kind of just don't forget it. You don't remember them until you do, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%. Yep.
Yeah. And I do find it really intriguing, like from a leadership perspective, how much of those sort of early learned behaviors impact the way people show up as leaders or not as leaders, as the case may be, the way they interact with people in the workplace, the way they project things, assume things, maybe behave in ways that don't really fit the context, and so on and so on.
Yeah. I think that's David, I love the way you said that, because I believe deeply, whether we're leading, being led, sitting at home, whatever we're doing, like our nervous systems don't know what we're doing. They just know there's a threat. And our nervous systems will get into action, even if we're leading in a high performance place where we need to be fully authentic and fully present. Our nervous systems are right back to that little T trauma moment, whether we want them to or not.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying, isn't it? Yeah.
Super annoying. So annoying.
Yeah, so we sort of touched on this already, but I think it leads nicely into the next question, doesn't it? Which is this concept of the inner critic and why so many leaders have such a strong one.
Yeah, I had a client the other day, David, who is a leader of a team of 7 or 8 people in a manufacturing environment. Extremely intelligent. I would say gifted leader. Very thoughtful, very analytical, like one of the best leaders that I get to work with. He was we're on a Zoom call just like this, and he kind of leans into the camera and he looks at me, he says, am I the only one that feels this like inner critic? Am I the only one that feels like I'm doing a bad job all the time, or like I need to do better? Like genuine question. Am I the only one? And I paused and I smiled a little bit and I said, you're not, like, it's everybody. It's every leader that I talk to. And of course I talk to leaders who are looking for a coach. But most leaders I talk to, even the ones I'm not coaching, have some sort of inner critic that keeps them stuck in some way. The question of like, why do they feel that's one for the ages. And I would love to hear your take. My sort of working theory. See, I'm going to turn it and make you answer that too, David. my working theory has a couple prongs. I think number one, the culture that we find ourselves in 2026 around work and leadership is one that says that the pace just has to be so fast that we just go and go and go and go, with little time to stop and pause and reflect and see, like, how are we doing? What is true about our leadership in our lives? So I think pace does that to us. I think the other thing that's true about the culture of work and leadership is that there is just immense pressure to perform, immense pressure to grow and produce more and earn more, and whatever team metric you're leading is to get more, and that pressure is just so immense that it causes us to fake it till we make it. I think that phrase is one that we use a lot in the leadership world. And I think all of that traces back to some level of immense pressure put on the leader today. That's sort of my working theory. I know there's other theory. I don't know. I mean, how would you answer that, David?
Yes, that's a good question. I think you're right. I think there's that sort of pace of change. I think I would add things like technology and social media in particular. And it's similar, I think, for imposter experience too. That sort of keeping up with the Joneses, comparison culture kind of aspect to it. Yeah. But I also think for both imposter and for this kind of inner critic thing, not all leaders experience it, especially not all business leaders. I think those who do, I take that as a green flag. It's a positive sign. It shows that you care about the right things, that you care at all, and that you're thinking, like, inwardly, you're self-reflecting enough to even be worried about these sort of things. Because if you weren't, you're the sort of sociopathic leader that nobody wants to work for.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I love that as a green flag. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. It's not to say that it's any easier to deal with, though. But
yeah. I mean, everything has a shadow, right? Yeah. I mean, if that's an indicator, right? I would never like celebrate one of my clients, feeling this deep inner critic. Like I wouldn't celebrate it for the fact, in and of itself that they feel it. But yeah, I would celebrate for sure. I mean, I love how you put it. I would celebrate the fact that they're aware of it and they notice it and they have that sort of inner dialogue. Yeah, I love that, David. I've never really thought about it like that.
Yeah, I think as well, to a certain extent, they're just part of the human experience, aren't they? Like, I think everyone has that in some form or another, apart from those outliers, like the extreme empath at one end and then the sociopath at the other. But yeah, I think, that sort of being able to recognize the fact that it's quite a common experience and you're not alone has to be the first step to feeling a bit better about it. Certainly was for me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. 1,000,000%. Yeah. I mean, I think I run into a lot of people, David, because we do sort of emotional maturity work as well. And, I run into a lot of people who say, I'm the least anxious person which is usually an indicator like, oh, you might be the most anxious person that I know. Usually the inner critic question, when someone says, I really don't struggle with that. If I know they're not a sociopath, what I know is you haven't noticed it yet, because I do think it is a human experience. Again, sociopaths kind of out of the question, but I do think it is a human experience. So there's probably a question of like, have you noticed it or have you felt it? I think some of our clients actually just feel like it's normal in a sense of like, well, this is it, right? Like this is what it means to be a leader. So I'm going to label this as normative and not begin to question if it has to be normative.
Yeah, I suppose to an extent that is true, isn't it? But yeah, that doesn't mean you have to keep putting up with it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there is a category of people out there who are just oblivious to it. And maybe they've had very sheltered careers and just been very fortunate. I guess that might be true as well. But yeah, interesting though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the next natural question is, how do you help them get unstuck? What does your process look like?
Yeah, good question. I mean, you talked about this already a little bit, like noticing and naming. I mean, noticing and naming is the first step. There is something, I wish I could articulate it, but there's something nearly magical that happens when we can say something out loud to another human. There is something that happens when what we think goes from our sort of internal dialogue into real dialogue with another human. So I do think being able to name, I'm really tough on myself. I'm harder on myself than I need to be. I'm beating myself up when I don't have to, or even just I don't want to feel that way anymore. That naming and noticing really is the first step. One of the other things we like to ask people early on is to begin to build the practice of pausing and reflecting when they feel this. We say transformation is like a super long, slow journey. If I'm going to be transformed in the way I think about myself or how I lead, it's going to take a long time. But I think maybe the closest thing to a silver bullet that I can give clients to, like, here's the guaranteed way to transform and mature and grow, is to practice reflection. And in the case of the inner critic, particularly, reflect on, what situation is stirring it up, and ask maybe one simple question: what's true? What's true? And that feels simple and flippant, and I certainly don't mean it to be simple and flippant, but over time, I think what's been true for me, what's been true for our clients, is that when that inner critic flares up, the centering question of what's true over the course of time can begin to change the way we think about ourselves and about our situations.
Yeah, I think that the giving voice to it almost feels mythological, doesn't it? Like
it does. It does.
But I'm trying to think. I love finding cliches that are true and trying to apply them to things. And the one that pops into mind for this one is the one about a burden shared is a burden halved. I think maybe just that act of like sharing what you're going through with someone else can feel like the load is lightened a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay.
We talk about guilt and shame quite a bit. We, in our kind of work with leaders and their work on little T trauma and emotional health, guilt is one of these things where, like, guilt can actually be productive for us. If I do something wrong, like, that can actually be empowering for me to name that and to feel that. Shame, however, is often connected to this inner critic, this feeling of not being enough. So shame is I am bad or I am wrong. Guilt is I did something bad. And what we believe is that shame of, like, not being enough or I need to criticize myself, that lives in the dark, which again sounds cliche. But yeah, saying something out loud like that begins to erode at our ability to believe it. It begins, even if it's just to one person or in a journal, even sometimes writing something down. I think kind of getting those things out of the dark does kind of mythologically take away its power to be truth in our minds.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other aspect of it is, particularly when we're working or dealing with leaders, like, leadership can be very isolating. Almost whether you're good at it or bad at it, like, it just by its nature, you naturally, whether you want to or not, it creates barriers, and it can be very lonely role to be in. So just that simple interaction of having a conversation with someone outside your team, outside your business, who isn't going to judge you, that whole kind of psychologically safe sort of space approach. Yeah. It can help with that, I find, and that is important, I think, particularly in this day and age where, much as I love remote work, that also is isolating. So if you're also leading as a remote worker of a remote team, it can be harder to build those connections, and the loneliness is real.
Yeah, I love how you make that connection to feeling isolated in leadership. I think that's such a great thing to bring into the conversation.
And it's not a simple solution as it used to be, I think, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We get these kind of assumptions in our minds as well when we're leading, particularly when we're newer at it, about perceptions, and the leader doesn't go for lunch with people, or doesn't have conversations at the water cooler, or doesn't have informal Zoom meetings anymore. I don't know what the modern equivalent would be, really. But
yeah. I had a leader early in my leadership career. I had a leader that I was probably responsible to report to this leader on some level, but not directly. He would say, "You can never let your people see you bleed." And I remember, like, in the moment, I was young, and I'm like, it just doesn't feel great. I get the sentiment. The sentiment is this one of like power, and like the leader is strong, and that sort of stuff. But yeah, the further I got away from that comment, the more isolating it felt. I mean, what's true is, like, we do bleed, and there is certainly some wisdom and discernment around like who we allow to see what. But yeah, it just it hit me in that moment so isolating. I would hear him say it, and I would just like bristle at it, and I kind of just felt bad for the person of, man, who do you let into that place, and like how are you handling that? But yeah, I think you're right that there are some older mental models that keep leaders in those places that create more isolation than they prevent.
yeah, I mean, cringe is the right word, isn't it?
Yeah.
That whole narrative about leadership and strength is pretty problematic anyway. I think it always has been, to be honest, but it's becoming a bit more acceptable to say this now.
Yeah.
Like, what if you get a paper cut in the office and your finger's bleeding? Do you have to immediately leave the room? Is that what you were saying? Like,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But also, like, hiding weakness isn't the same as strength, is it?
That's so good, David.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, I feel, I agree. I feel bad for those people, because if that's how they think leadership is, they must be really lonely and probably miserable most of their careers.
Yeah. 100%.
I feel like we've gone down some of the negatives and the not do these things past there. So let's bring that back to a more optimistic view of it. What does it look like when a leader truly is thriving? What are the perhaps less obvious benefits to themselves and to their team as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So thriving is one of these words that gets thrown out a lot, and I think everybody means a little something different. We connect thriving to authenticity, and I want to be really clear that I think there's a myth that authenticity, it gets equated with like not having a filter. Authenticity gets equated with, well, this is just who I am, so take me or leave me. That's not that's not how we think about authenticity. We think about thriving as being authentically who and how we want to be. We believe that every one of us has gifts, passions, things we're excited about, things we're good at, things we want to do, things we want to be a part of, things that give us life and energy. We believe that every one of us as leaders can show up in ways that are aligned with who we want to be and who we are designed and created to be. That is thriving. If I can show up in a place of leadership and my leadership aligns with who I've decided that I want to be and how I've decided I want to be, that is what we would say is thriving. Meaning, again, not that I don't have a filter, not that I'm just going to say to David, everything's on my mind and say, take it or leave it. But rather, when I walk into a place like a boardroom or a meeting with staff or whatever it is, if I can hang on to my core values, the guiding principles that I have established for myself, if I can hang on to those and leave those places and say, yes, as best as possible, I hung on to those things, I maintained my sense of who and how I want to be, that's really like the end zone. That's the goal line for us. We don't really get into a lot of the weeds of like, how do you be a productive leader? Like I honestly don't really care about company metrics. A lot of my leaders do, and they should. But I am way more concerned. Yeah, probably depends on the company metric, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I am way more concerned that a leader that I coach can approach those metrics and lead towards them in a way that aligns with who and how they want to be. I think that means more leaving the office feeling energy. I think it means more leaving the office and having the desire to, like, have a life outside of work. It doesn't drain us of all our energy. It allows us to not be reactive at home. It allows us to go home and not want to, metaphorically kick the dog, if you will. We don't advocate that anybody kicks it. We love dogs. Yeah. But I think it's all for us about that alignment with who and how we've decided to be.
Yeah. So this word authenticity, I know exactly what you're saying. I absolutely love the concept. I love authentic leadership in particular. I think it's, it's one of the best ways to lead. But I also think it's kind of like that, the radical candor movement and brutal honesty, and a lot of like the misuse of personality tests as well, where it just becomes like an excuse to just behave badly with no consequence.
Yeah. 1,000,000%, David. Yep.
Yeah.
We think about authenticity. Yeah. So let me use can I give you an example?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I hate that we have to explain what we mean by authenticity so much.
Yeah.
But what we would say is, if a leader is in a meeting and they're feeling triggered or stirred up, our idea of authenticity is that they get to decide what to do in that moment. And if they decide, I'm going to lash out, well, then I want them to decide that. I don't want them to default into lashing out. The other way is true too. If a leader is feeling triggered and stirred and withdraws kind of into themselves and doesn't say what they want to say, or doesn't feel like the time is right to say what they want to say, then I want them to make that decision intentionally, based on their best thinking, based on their best decision making, and again based on who and how they want to be. So I think there's probably a case to be made that the outcome probably isn't as important to me in our work as the process to get there. When I would also say if I'm in my best thinking, I'm never going to lash out in a meeting. Like I would probably make some caveats and say I'm not sure there's ever a time and place to belittle someone in a work meeting. And I also think, I probably am an optimist to say if we can get to our best thinking, our intentional decision making, I really don't think any of us are going to land there. And there are outliers like we talked about earlier, but the leaders that we work with, what we find is if they can get to their best thinking, they will make a decision. Maybe the decision is to withdraw in because the time isn't right to speak, right? And that's the sort of authenticity that we're looking for. That it's not a carte blanche. I'm always going to say this, or I'm always going to do this. But like, how can I make a principled decision every time I'm triggered or stirred that again aligns with who and how I want to be? So that it's a nuanced difference, but I do think it's a difference.
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been, firstly, I kind of do care about the outcomes as well, but I see where you're coming from.
That's fair.
I think for me, though, authenticity in leadership, at least, probably elsewhere as well, I see it very much tied to like honesty and building trust. I think the reason why it's so powerful when it's done right is that it will very rapidly build trust with people.
Yeah.
But I think part of the problem with it is, and particularly in like the world of marketing, where people have discovered that it's quite effective, and therefore they try to apply it like to the nth degree sort of thing, and they go too far with it. They share too much. They bring their entire personality into the room every time, even when it's not appropriate. Like the Instagram classic is picture of every meal, right? Like, the sort of thing that nobody really asked for, and isn't appropriate and isn't needed either, and is also in
Yeah.
the leadership context. That's not what authentic leadership looks like. Authentic
Yeah.
leadership doesn't mean showing up and giving everyone a download of everything you've done since you last saw them.
Yeah.
What it means is showing up and reacting to a situation in a way that fits you, your principles, your values, your character, the kind of leader you want to be, all the things you were saying. So
Yeah.
it's moderated, but still true.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I mean, I love the moderated but still true. I think that's the best way. I don't think I could say it better. I think a lot of people feel that sort of inauthenticity if they're not like, oh, here's everything about me since we last met, as you said, and that's something different. Right now, like there's some sort of anxiety at play, or there's some sort of little T trauma at play. But I had a leader the other day that I talked to. He leads a team of volunteers. He's actually a pastor. I'll just say that. He was in a very hard conversation with a staff member, and we got on a Zoom together, and he laid out, here's what I'm going to do, and here's the conversation I'm going to have. And it was stark. It was sort of heat of the moment. Here's kind of like blitzkrieg, right? I'm going in, and I asked the question. I asked two questions. Does that align with who and how you want to be, and is it going to get the results that you want it to, right? And his answers were to both, no. and I think to me that's authenticity. I think some of the world today, some even leadership voices would say, no, if you feel that way, go in with both guns blazing, right? Whereas I would say, be authentically who you are, hold those principles and those guiding the values that you let guide your leadership. Be really clear about those and hold on to them. And I think to your point about trust and relationships, you kind of get like one really good shot at that, at least one really good shot at ruining that. So I think that's the sort of practical authenticity is not like, how do you go into this, take it or leave it, here's who I am, but how do you go into this most aligned with the results you want and the principles that you want to hold.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, there's that quote, isn't there? Quite famous one from Warren Buffett, which I'll probably butcher, but the one about a reputation, how it takes like a lifetime to build it and seconds to lose it.
Yeah,
I think that's the kind of thing. And then also, maybe this is part of that moderation piece, but there's the bit about like being true to yourself, your values, and who you want to be. Definitely matters. There's also like more practical considerations, like, is that going to be helpful in that situation? Is that going to produce the result I want or what the business needs?
Yeah.
Because again, like, so punctuality is an example I use quite a lot in this context, where like, if you're going to make a big deal as a leadership team or as a business about punctuality being a core value for you, and then none of your leadership team are ever on time for anything, like, that's the sort of inauthenticity that people pick up on.
Yeah.
But also, like, even if you are, and then someone is late, so you're a bit annoyed about that, your natural instinct is punctuality matters. We need to say something. We need to do something. We're going to charge in and shout at them or whatever. You should never shout at anyone in any business context, just to underline that. But in this example, is that actually going to be helpful, though? Are they going to change their behavior if you get in their face about it like that? Probably not. Most people will react badly to that at best and double down at worst. So it's not worth that, is it? And you've got to kind of read the room a bit and be a bit contextual and adaptable in the way you deal with these things.
Yeah, I think that feels so wise, David. I mean, I like what you. Hey,
I'm not sure, but I'll take your word for it. Yeah,
you should like do a podcast about leadership, David.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I like about what you said is the question is always the question of like, is this going to get the results that I want? That's always an important question. And I think if the answer is no, I think a leader can say no and choose to pause or not react and still be authentic. let me give you an example. I served this church in a small community, and we had a couple part-time custodians. They would clean the building, and they were quite aged. They were aging quickly, and the performance was dropping. And quite frankly, I would get very frustrated, very frustrated. They didn't report to me, but I would say to the person they did report to, the director of operations, he and I were peers. I would, in moments of, professional collegial conversation, say something to the effect of like, enough's enough. Like, these people have to go. And that's me being as honest with you as I can in those moments. Like, I was angry. It's time. Like, these people have to go. This peer who's done a lot of the same work that we coach people in, he asked me the question. He would always ask me, we can do that, but are you willing to bear the consequences? Like, do you think the results of that are going to be what you think it's going to be? And, these are people in a small town that everybody knows, that everybody loves. Like, is now the moment to pull that trigger and bear those consequences as a leader? In my emotional state, I was like, yes, let's do it. But in best thinking, the answer was no. Right. And I don't think that makes me an inauthentic leader. I think that makes me authentic, meaning that I want to make the best decision, given the information in front of me, the best decision I can. So I think even in those moments, I think you highlighted something that is important, that there are ways to say, pause, time out. This isn't going to get the result I want, so I'm going to go a different direction. Doesn't mean I'm a bad leader or inauthentic or anything. It doesn't mean anything. It just means I'm making the best decision I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, another example, I'm quite impatient by nature. Does that mean I'm always rushing at work or always trying to rush other people? Not anymore. Maybe once.
Yeah. Good example.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's very good conversation so far. I'm going to ask you a few more slightly generic questions about leadership and see what you come up with. So the first one, I think, and we may have already covered this, but what would you say has been the most important lesson you've learned about leadership in your career so far?
Yep. I love this question, and I haven't answered it. I had a mentor who taught me that how we do something is at least as important, maybe more important than what we do. I worked with a leader through the global pandemic who I would call a mentor. He led through an incredibly difficult time. Then again, I mentioned earlier, there's some sort of internal tension that we were navigating to. And I watched this leader navigate. People wanted him to act quickly, wanted him to make decisions that seemed obvious, that probably weren't. I mean, you know how these go. Like, the obvious decisions are most oftentimes the hardest, and most times aren't as obvious as we think. But he would say to me, like, even when I felt like, hey, it's time to move, like, let's take some steps, let's lead, let's do this thing. He would always tell me, sometimes how we do things is more important even than what we do. Meaning, you said earlier that the way we build trust, the way we navigate anxiety with people, the way we listen to people, all of those things are just as important, maybe sometimes even more important than the decision we make or the things that we do. I use that in my own life and leadership at least once a week.
Yeah, it is an important lesson. And I think in a business context, hard to think of a more important example of when that matters than like that redundancy, parting of the ways kind of scenario.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you see all the time, don't you? There's always examples on social media and that. Like, there was that really well-known one couple of years back where they let go like a couple of hundred people or something via Zoom meeting with 15 minutes notice or something like that.
Oh.
And you're just like, okay, look, if we just take it as read that this was necessary, the how you did it really mattered there. and you fell so far short. Like,
oh, that is cringe-worthy, David.
Isn't it? Yeah, like they're having people's computers locked out and their desks cleared while they're in that meeting, and geez. Like,
how do you get to that point? Like,
how do you live with it afterwards as well?
Yes,
like,
Hey, how was your day today? My day was great. I did this thing. Like, David, that like hits me in all kinds of different.
I think that the answer to that question from those guys probably was brilliant. I saved the company hundreds of millions today. That's
I think you're probably right.
That's the only way I can see them living with it.
These are the outliers from earlier, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Doesn't bear thinking about it, does it?
Right?
Yeah. So let's move on from that. That's enough talking down big CEOs. What is your best memory of being led?
Yeah. So early in my career, again, I had a leader who was, I think on some level, I was early leadership. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, David. I'm at a staff meeting, kind of conference room table with like 15 other people. And I'm sitting there after somebody in the organization had made a mistake. The business manager made a mistake, and none of us got paid on time. Like direct deposit was a week late. I watched the leader of the organization set up the story. Hey, I know there's been this mistake, and then I watched the leader welcome the business manager to share what happened. The business manager said, hey, here's the mistake I made. Here's how it's not going to happen again. And the business manager said, now I would love to hear the impact that my mistake had on you. And I watched the leader of the organization create space for all of us as, a team, be able to have the space to name, here's the impact of me not getting paid for a week. And most of us around the table were like, no big deal. A couple people, it was a big deal. A couple people that had some auto pay kind of stuff, and it was a big deal. And all the while, I'm seeing this key leader of the organization create this tone and culture that said that we own our mistakes, and we listen for impact, so that we can, number one, understand what we're apologizing for. And number two, create a level of trust and listening amongst the team. And I will never forget, the posture of that leader, the courage of that leader, and the ability then, and what it felt like for me to be heard. Even I didn't say anything, and I still felt heard. Right. So that sort of leadership posture that never once apologized for the person, never once overfunctioned and said, I promise this will never happen again. Right. None of the kind of tropey cliche things. Just in the moment, let the moment be, and let the conversations happen. And honestly, that was the healthiest team I've ever worked on. I learned a ton, and I will never forget that is the posture that I want to recreate, that listens, and listens well for impact, not just for how can I be sorry, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How can I get forgiveness and move on?
Yeah.
That is such a great story, particularly that impact question. Like, how many people even think about that, let alone leaders?
I hope more and more.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But
it's such a great lesson for accountability and building the right culture as well. Because if you don't fully understand the consequences of things, good or bad, you can't really appreciate. You can't really have accountability. You can't really lead from that sort of right place, that right headspace. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for that story.
Yeah.
So I've only got fun questions left now. Not that the others haven't been fun, but
it's
these
all
are
been fun.
A bit silly, Len, let's say. So the first one is it's that classic time travel question, right? So if you could start your career over again, is there anything you would do differently?
Easy. Easy, David. This one's so easy for me. My first like real leadership role. I had a person that I reported to who would ask me so many questions. And I remember feeling so upset and frustrated and angry. Like, why are you asking me so many questions? Like, I'm telling you why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm telling you why this needs to be done. Just leave me alone. And I remember like being like, maybe even on some level being hurt. Like, why don't you trust me? I mean, that was the question. Like, why don't you trust me? I look back now, David, and I realize, number one, I had no capacity for curiosity. So I would work on right now in present day Kurt. Curiosity is a value that I want to hold in every conversation I'm in. But that back then, time travel, Kurt, no curiosity, no capacity to say, why is this person asking me these questions? Like, is there another motive other than lack of trust? So number one, I'd be curious. But number two, like I realize now, I look back and I realize, I gave away so many opportunities to lead well because I was so caught up in like, why don't you trust me? He did trust me. Like he did. And asking questions is actually what good leaders do. He was actually leading me really well. He was giving me an opportunity for me to get clear on what I was doing, letting me get clear on motives and outcomes. And I missed all of it because I was so caught up in this feeling like I was not being trusted. Now, certainly there are times where people don't trust us, but this wasn't one. Like, I can look back now and see so clearly this wasn't it. This was genuine care and concern for me and for the organization. And I missed it. So if I could time travel, I would go back to those years and like be curious and capitalize on those moments where I could learn something from someone who was really just trying to help me out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good lesson. I think probably everyone's been in that similar situation at least, especially when you're young. Like,
yeah,
questions are annoying. Like, I just want to, this is just my job. Just leave me alone. Let me do it.
Yeah.
I've definitely been in that space.
The older I get, David, I don't, maybe it's age. I don't know if it's age or experience. Maybe it's both, but the more and more I appreciate like accountability and layers of like people that can ask me questions, you know, people that can push on me and challenge me. Like, I look around, like, I don't think that's the norm today. I think that makes me sad a little bit. I'm not sure that's the norm, but I do grow more and more to appreciate, like, yeah, can someone push me and challenge me and like question me? Like, this is where I grow. This is where the fruit comes from. Like, make me think about these things, you know?
Yeah. I don't think it's age or experience. I think it's confidence, which maybe comes from one or both of those.
Oh, that's good, David.
I don't know. I mean, speaking for myself, at least, like I was still in some of those things that we talked about earlier, like the inner critic, the imposter syndrome and that sort of thing. And when you're in that sort of place, it's very hard to view questions as anything other than accusations, isn't it? Like,
yeah. And probably to come full circle, probably some little T trauma coming into play too.
Potentially, yeah. Maybe less so for me in that example, at least. But yeah, you're right. You are right. It's yeah. I'm not going to say anything about that particular leader I'm thinking of because we'll go down a whole other avenue that this episode doesn't really need right now.
Fair.
Kurt, this last question is both my favorite and quite often the most difficult. And you'll see why in a minute. But it's leadership heroes.
Leadership heroes.
So if you had to pick one person, and it's that bit that people struggle with, is the one person. But it can be anyone you can think of. They can be alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious. But it's someone who, in your opinion, perfectly embodies leadership. So who is that for you and why?
Yeah. So I read this question and I'm like, man, there's a real pressure here to pick one person. And like, you know, I'm always curious. I'd love to know how many of your guests like pick the kind of cliche, like famous leader Is that common, or do people kind of pick the leader down the street that's probably the best leader we know, but nobody else knows? Does that make sense?
Oh, I don't know if I want to give you spoilers before you've answered.
Okay.
But, I'll tell you afterwards. Give us your answer
great.
first.
Great. Yeah. So mine is he's a really good friend of mine. His name's Brian Keepers. And he was one of my mentors. He is very much alive today, and I see him quite often. But this was my supervisor in the church that I led through the pandemic. And this is the person who taught me how you do things is often as important as what you do. It's simple, David. I learned more from this person than anybody else in my leadership journey. The curiosity, the emotional maturity, the humility, and frankly, the deep, deep care for people that he leads. That has impressed upon me more than I know how to articulate. I think there's so much more in that. How you do things is important. There's so much in that learning for me that goes beyond just the sort of leadership cliche of it. That I find it hard to express my gratitude for this person, and the not just the way that he led in a crazy hard time, but the way that he invested into me, and the way that he poured into me and came behind me and beside me. I have so much gratitude. So when this question comes up, that is the name that comes to mind. I love him. He's a great friend, great leader. And I can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah. And that very clearly comes through as listening to you talk about him. I have to say, so there's kind of like three categories that people come into with this. And one of those, which is probably my preferred one because it feels more meaningful, it's different to the others, is people whose leadership that they've personally experienced. It's quite rare, though, I have to say, that even in that category, people pick someone like that who's maybe a bit of a contemporary sort of situation and a friend, rather than very rarely someone they've directly worked for, quite often like a parent or a sibling.
Yeah.
And so I think you get extra bonus points, like double bonus points for this answer because it's quite unique. So Thank you for that. And then the other two categories are like Jesus comes up a lot, as you can
wondered,
imagine.
Yeah.
I think Moses came up once as well. He's a bit more rare. Yeah. And then the second and third, and they swap quite a lot depending on the month, is Captain Picard from Star Trek.
I love that.
Yeah. And Abraham Lincoln. Weird.
Okay.
Yeah, I went through a period a couple of years back. I think because there'd been a book released about him, maybe, or there was a TV program about him, something like that. He was in the consciousness.
Sure.
So yeah, Abe Lincoln came up for like, I don't know, 6 or 7 episodes in a row at one point.
Okay. I am looking at the time. I want to honor that, but can I give you a real quick theory of mine?
Please do. Yeah. Love a good theory.
When you think about like who are the leaders you want to like talk to or have lunch with or whatever, meet again or whatever it is, there's this theory that connects with it in preaching, right? So I come from the pastoral world. There's a theory that says that the pastor or preacher down the road in the church that nobody knows about is probably the best pastor or preacher you've ever met, but nobody knows, right? And like these sort of super popular, like sure they're popular cult of personality kind of people, but the best pastor you know is hidden down the street in this church that nobody knows about, right? That they are the best. Not all of them, but the best one is hidden, right? The best leader is hidden. I actually think the same is true in this conversation. Like, it's hard for me to argue with Jesus and Moses, but I think oftentimes, like, I think the best leaders are the quietest ones that nobody knows, you know? And maybe I'm wrong, and you can push on that if you want, but the best leaders I think are often hidden.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think for me, it's the personal connections, isn't it? I think that's the thing. And yeah, like you're right. I mean, Jesus, Moses, like the fictional characters, even the superheroes, all of those people, like you can't argue with them in terms of the great leaders, the shining examples, but how real can they ever really be? Because nobody's met them for Well, in the case of the fictional ones, ever. And then the historical figures for like generations hence. So, yeah, I mean, they're interesting academically and I love talking about them. They're just not the same.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah, that's very cool, though. Very cool hearing stories like that. I do enjoy it. And I think that theory as well is, I think the same could be said for like marketing and business and coaches. Like the best coaches are the ones nobody's ever heard of. Not because they're bad coaches, because they're bad at marketing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes.
Yep.
Well, Kurt, thank you so much for being with us today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you have as well. And if anyone in the audience would like to learn more about you, the work that you do, what are the websites, the links, etc.?
Yep. So our website is brimstonecoachinggroup.com. People can find anything they want to know about myself, my coaching partner, what the work looks like that we do, how and why. Also on that website, there is a link for a free inquiry call. If somebody wants to just ask some questions and see if maybe we're a good fit for helping them move past that inner critic, they can do that for free. We also have a podcast and a book that's over my shoulder, but they can find all that on the website too. I don't need to say all that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, David. Take care.
Kurt, thank you again for your time today for an incredibly interesting conversation. We touched on a lot of really important topics of leadership there. And the trauma part of it as well was particularly enlightening for me. We even uncovered one of my own small t traumas there. Listener, viewer, hope you found that useful. If you would like to learn more about Kurt and the work that he does or has done, you will find those links down in the show notes. Check out his LinkedIn, check out his website, reach out to him for a conversation, as I'm sure he would love to hear from you. And if you are one of those struggling leaders, the first-timers, the new managers, perhaps even a first-time business founder growing your first ever team, and you are feeling that sink or swim, pushed in at the deep end kind of experience, kind of phenomena right now, perhaps the imposter syndrome, although I don't like the word syndrome, the imposter experience, perhaps that's starting to wrap you on the knuckles, tap you on the shoulder, loom over your shoulder, if you will. Then good news, the Integrity Leaders community is here for you. You'll find out more at my website. It is leadingwithintegrity.co.uk, and there's a big green button on that homepage, which will take you to our community sign-up area. If at any point you would like to learn more, my LinkedIn details are also down in the show notes. Please do connect and drop me a message. Always happy to hear from a listener or viewer of the show, and very much always happy to talk about leadership. Some might say to excess, but I'll leave that up to your judgment. Thank you again so much for being with us today. Do join me again next week with my next guest, Leslie Waldron. We'll be talking about health at work, women's health in particular, perimenopause, what leaders don't know, don't think about, could know, could do, how and what leaders can be doing to support health more generally in the workplace, as well as those more specific examples too. So again, another interesting conversation, a topic we've not really touched on before, but nonetheless, a very important one for the modern workplace. Hope you'll be back with us, and until then, as always, be a leader, not a boss.